Some questions that relationship researchers address a lot are why we experience love and why are some people more ready for relationships than others? These questions are all related to attachment, which is the topic that will be covered in this lecture. To get at the why we love, we can look at our evolutionary history. As humans evolved, parental care of our offspring created bonds. These bonds are the foundation of our experience of love and promotes friendly interaction and love between us. Underlying the attachment bonds we form with others are two basic motivations, approach and avoidance. We desire bonding with others, but we are also ambivalent about it. There are fear and aggressive tendencies that encourage us and other animals to keep a distance from others. For example, a child will show their first fear of strangers at around 5 or 6 months old, turning away from them and seeking comfort with those that they are familiar with. Psychological theory on attachment originated with people like Anna Freud and Dollard and Miller. They believed that children bond with the mother because they are physically dependent on her for basic needs like food. But there are many studies across different human cultures showing that children bond to parents, or only one or two reference people more than others. For example, in Israeli kibbutz communities, many child care attendants take care of children, and parents often see their children about an hour a day. Yet still, their children are more bonded to their parents than the child care attendants. So it's not just about physical nourishment. In contrast to earlier theories, John Bowlby proposed a biological attachment theory, which is based on the idea that the mother-child bond is not passive. Baby and caregiver interact, and behaviors such as cuddling, kissing, talking, and play all increase feelings of love and attraction. Mary Ainsworth conducted considerable research on infant-mother attachment. The premise is simple. Children need a reliable caregiver in order to develop trust in themselves and in others in order to develop a secure attachment. The strange situation test was used to study this phenomenon. The video here is a recreation of what this test looks like. This entire interaction is recorded, and researchers code a wide variety of behaviors to classify an infant's attachment style. A secure child uses mom as the base and is easily consoled when mom returns. If the child was hard to calm down, she would be classified with an ambivalent and secure style. If she acted aloof, she would be classified with an avoidant style. She would act that way because she may not have been used to having her needs met by a responsive or reliable caregiver. Even though psychologists claim that attachment styles we form as children carry over into how we operate into our adult relationships, it wasn't until the late 1980s that researchers started examining this in relation to romantic love. Hazen and Shaver argued that relationships between romantic partners are affection bonds that differ between people because of their early attachment styles as children. In this early adult attachment research, they printed a love quiz in their local newspaper. Some of the items from the quiz are presented here on the slide. People filled it out and sent their responses into the researchers by mail. What was interesting about this initial survey is that the frequencies of the different attachment styles among adults were similar for those found in infants, with about one half being secure and slightly more of the remainder classifying themselves as avoidant than as ambivalent. There have been many advances in attachment research. The first is in how people of different attachment styles experience love. There are many kinds of love, and people of different attachment styles prefer different forms. For example, people who have anxious love, which is like obsessive preoccupation and emotional dependence, tend to be more ambivalent in their attachment styles than other types. Other researchers have looked at how people with different attachment styles deal with negative emotions, such as how clingy they may get when they are about to be separated from a loved one going away on a trip. Avoidant types are the least distressed about breakups, followed by secures. The most distraught tend to be the ambivalent types. Finally, researchers were interested in whether attachment really mattered to people, or whether it only did because we measure it. In one study, researchers asked people to spend 5 minutes talking about what kind of intimate partner they have and what their relationship is like. They recorded these and then coded the questions based on what words they used. They found that attachment-related words like closeness, dependence, and affection were spontaneously mentioned by almost all of the participants, and they were 1/5 of the total words. Secure people were more likely to talk about mutual support with their partners. Avoidant people were more likely to talk about balance of dependence. Ambivalent people talked about closeness and displays of affection the most. So attachment was salient and reflected in the language used. The way researchers have studied attachment style has changed a lot over the years as well. Some researchers still use an interview approach. Old measures of attachment use forced choice responses, where you would select one item describing relationship behaviors that best describe you. Today, most researchers use multiple items, where you can report on how much you agree or disagree with statements like, "I often worry that my partner doesn't really love me." So far, we have described 3 attachment styles, but researchers today tend to use a 4-group model. If we learn that others can be there for us when we need them, as children, then we have low avoidance in our relationships as adults. If we develop a negative view of ourselves as people when we're children and feel ourselves as unworthy, then we experience more anxiety in our relationships. So when we plot how much anxiety or avoidance we have in our intimate relationships, seen here with the green and purple arrows, you would fall within one of the 4 quadrants. Secures are low in anxiety and avoidance and are more comfortable in their relationships than other styles. Preoccupied folks tend to avoid dependencies in relationships. Fearful people avoid relationships as much as possible, and preoccupied folks are overly dependent. There are many ways attachment styles predict differences in behaviors and perceptions in relationships. Secure individuals tend to have higher levels of relationship quality in general and are better communicators across the board, disclosing about themselves more with others, being flexible, and using better problem-solving strategies like compromising. Preoccupied people tend to experience the most jealousy as they feel threatened by the loss of the relationship. They tend to be so worried about losing the relationship that they are not responsive to what their partner is actually experiencing. They have low relationship satisfaction, a strong need for physical affection, and the relationships are quite tumultuous. Avoidants tend to avoid conflict, have low satisfaction in their relationships, and generally do not reveal much to others because they lack trust. They're also least likely to be committed, or to have relationships that have low dependence, such as one-night stands. Can your relationship attachment style change? The answer is yes, but change is not always easy. The feelings we develop about the self and others is based on patterns of behaviors and experiences that we have had early in our lives. These tendencies are deeply ingrained. But we know that significant life events, like being in an abusive relationship, can change secure individuals into fearful types, and that a stable, loving relationship can slowly build trust that is lacking for an avoidant individual. In summary, the bonds that we form with our caregivers early on have served an adaptive function for us as a species, and are a foundation for our experience of love. The attachment style we form in our childhood then later impacts our adult relationships. Using anxiety and avoidance dimensions, we can classify people into 4 basic attachment styles. These styles all differ in how people experience the relationships and perceive their partners and themselves. Want to see what your attachment style is? Take the attachment style survey for your activity on this topic.